Constructivism is a critique of foundationalism. Now, part of what you're going to be asked, well, this is nuts and bolts, is to think about the differences between the two. So you may be asked a question about constructivism, but the implication is what rationalists believe, or you may be asked a question about foundationalists. That's a new word for you. But the implication may be what the constructivists believe. So you have to know the difference. You have to be able to separate the two. Rationality, they believe, is a social and cultural construction. It cannot be achieved without prejudice or biased perspective. Now, here we're using words that are charged socially, but in philosophy, these aren't charged. Prejudice just means the way you see things. We're hardwired to see things in a certain way, or biased. In other words, we're hardwired to see the world from a biased perspective that cannot be eliminated. It leads to two things, again, nuts and bolts. Cognitive relativism. Cognitive is what you know. We're talking about knowledge, epistemology. It leads to cognitive relativism. Relative means the truth is relative to culture, relative to individual perception. It's a denial of universal truths. It also leads to what we call ethical relativism, a denial of universal moral principles. So cultures have different mores. They hold to different moral values, as well as different ideas about what the truth is. So I think I gave you an example in here. If I didn't, I'll repeat it for you. There were two ancient cultures, the Romans and the Greeks, who believed in infanticide. If a child was so defective it couldn't survive, they'd leave it out to nature. They didn't see anything wrong with that. How many of you know nature does that? You ever watch any nature programs? Big Cat Diary? Mothers will regularly abandon babies that aren't going to make it. They intuitively know who's not going to make it. They need to preserve the ones who can. So they purposely won't feed the ones. They won't nurse the ones that aren't going to make it. The species doesn't go on without success. Failure does not promote the species. And they have this, can I say innate? And I think it's intuitive idea, who's going to make it and who isn't going to make it. Well, the Romans and Greeks had the same idea. Well, you can't do that. We're superior to them. We're rational beings. I hate to tell you, but the Romans left us so much culture and so much advancement along with their cruelty. Where do you think highways come from? The Appian Ways. Incredible. Aqueducts, how to pass water along. You don't have to stand there anymore and get it out of the river, and you have this whole system of machinery that deposits water from one area to the next, and you need slaves to do this all. No, they had aqueducts. Brilliant people. Same thing with the Greeks. And yet they left defective infants out to die. Most of us, you can't do that. That's cruel. In fact, it's against the law. It's first-degree murder to purposely leave a child out like that. Throw them in the garbage and you'll get in trouble. So that's the difference between constructivism and foundationalism. You have to know cognitive relativism. It denies universal truths because it's based on culture, and the same thing with moral values. There are similarities in both. Both acknowledge ethnocentrism, cultural and ethnic biases. Even these people say, yeah, you guys are all wrong, but you're entitled to your opinion. And they also therefore deny ethnocentric imperialism, that one culture should be able to impose their values on someone else. They also recognize a difference between the strong sense, claims that there are no universally valid standards, and the weak sense, claims that standards of rationality and morality are culturally driven. So then let me finish with this about 10 minutes. This is a fellow named Bertrand Russell. He's a British philosopher, far out among most of us. And he asks these fundamental questions. He writes a paper entitled Does Philosophy Break Bread? What does that mean? Well, it begs the question, why should you study philosophy? This is the hardest part of intro, to introduce you to something that maybe is valuable that you don't see it. For example, how will learning this prepare me for a job? You remember the very first video I showed you? Turns out that people who take philosophy have the highest incidence of success. Lawyers take philosophy more than anyone else. And is anyone going to go to law school or anything? Yeah, because lawyers are embarrassing. They learn how to tell stories very effectively. So they go to court, and it's not the truth, the whole truth, and anything but the truth. It's, okay, so how can I take the facts and present a believable story? There's a fellow in California who went on trial for killing a young girl and then raping her, or raping her and then killing her. And they went to trial. It's very hard without a body to prove murder. but circumstantial evidence was really strong. So the defense attorney says time out, and they all went into the judge's chamber. When they went into the judge's chamber, the jury that's going to decide the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth cannot hear what's going on. So the defendant who's accused of killing this girl realizes they're pretty close to nailing him. So he says, if I tell you where the body is, do we take the death penalty off the table? Oh, really? Are you admitting it? And the lawyer for him says, whoa, wait a minute. I think I can make an arguable case that it was her mother and father that killed him, like with JonBenet Ramsey. Now, it's off the record. Everybody knows he's going to tell him where the body is. I realize I'm bashing lawyers. So. They go back into court, and now they're back into the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And the guy makes a pretty convincing case. Turns out the jury doesn't believe him. And in order to get the death penalty off, the guy finally tells them where the body is, and it's murder 2 instead of murder 1. There's no death penalty for it. Constructing the truth, believable truth. Why study philosophy? Lawyers love it. Teaches them how to think. Think outside the box. Be creative. If it won't help me get a job, then philosophy is not worth studying. In other words, if philosophy bakes no bread, doesn't make me bread, why bother to study it? Well, Bertrand says this: it enlarges yourself. In the vastness of the universe, who am I and how do I fit in? Have you ever thought of your own destiny? Probably not yet. Anybody have a destiny? Has anybody thought about what their destiny is? Any of you have Professor Mukherjee for biology? She stops by my office every morning, and we talk. And one day she stopped and we're chatting. She says, oh, by the way, before I go to my class, she says, do you know what your destiny is? I said, of course I do. She says, you mind sharing it? And I said, I have literally been fortunate enough to be around this world. I've been in 17 countries. I've lived in 3. I speak 3 languages. I said, it occurred to me early on in life that this is a really big rock we live on. And this is how big we are on the rock. I said, my destiny is to leave this place a little better than the way I found it before I go. Just a little bit. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Can I hold the door for you? At Publix, would you like help putting your stuff in the trunk of your car? Do you want me to take that cart back for you? Professor, I ran out of time. Is there any way maybe you could give me a little bit of grace and let me turn it in late? With the universe this large, oftentimes we wonder, what's really the meaning of my existence? Well, it means everything. Your deepest fear is not that you're inadequate. Your deepest fear is that you're powerful beyond measure. It's the light and not the darkness that frightens you. Playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so those around you don't feel inadequate. We were all meant to shine as children do. And when you let your light shine, you automatically get permission. See, this is about discussions. When you let your light shine, just takes one, you automatically give permission to those around you to do the same. When you're liberated from your own fears, your presence automatically eliminates those around you from their fears as well. This is an amazing organ. I didn't realize this, but you can light a candle 2 miles away, everything else dark, and you will see that light. The darkness has no ability to overcome light. You've all been taught, we don't care what you think. Just shut up, learn the FCAT test, pass the test, and everybody will be happy. That's not what happens here. The reason we have discussion and dialogue is just to open the eye, to see a little light. Collateral damage. Very interesting thought. Never would have thought of that. Opens a whole picture. Opens a whole window, a perspective on how we see things. Bertrand Russell is just trying to get us to open our minds. Just a little bit to see if some light will go in. 2 more things. Contemplation, he says, increases awareness of yourself and the world around you. It does give you a sense of destiny and purpose, because a mind that studies the universe is great simply because of the greatness of the universe. So let me end with this. Give me a couple of minutes. The whole point of philosophy, philosophizing, dialoguing is to get us to share ideas. In my class, people, there's nothing wrong with your ideas. There's no such thing as a stupid idea or a stupid question. But you do lose in the process if you don't open up and share what's in you. You don't let any light out, how can any light get in? So hopefully that's an encouragement, it's an invitation. We'll go through this every time we get together. I will try and prompt you more and more, or provoke you, may I say, to dialogue with me. Any questions for me? So this is just fundamental, people. All of this information, very fundamental. Know it before you take your quiz. I expect 100% from everybody. If you came in late, let me know you